It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting, either through my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show, be sure and check out our Spreaker. Every Friday night, our archives are free. You go to Spreaker.com, where we are right now. It's 8 p.m. Oh, my goodness, March 31st. It's going to be April Fools tomorrow. I must be the biggest fool on the planet for doing this for 10 years. But what do you call it? Opperman Report. Spreaker.com. You can sign up for free. There's a chat room with really cool, friendly people. And you get an email notification when I put up new content. I play repeats every night, and I do an exclusive live show every Friday night. It's no longer exclusive because we do give this show over to the stations now, unlike we used to. Now, our Patreon, if you like the show and you don't like the commercials, or you think you might miss a show every now and then, you say, oh no, did I miss something good? You can join our Patreon. Opperman Report Patreon. Now, here's the deal with that. We just put up a little survey because we care what the listeners think. And did I put up? Let me pull it up here again. About, what are you looking for us to do here? Now, here's the situation. We're getting a lot of drop-offs on the Patreon, subscribers to the Patreon, which is as little as $3 a month, and you get all the content commercial-free. But there's also other levels if you want to support more, $5, $10. I think there's even a $20 section. And there's an exit poll when people unsubscribe. And everyone's saying, well, I can no longer afford this. My financial situation has changed. Well, I got to be blunt with you. If you can't afford to support the show, I can't afford to do the show. Okay? So tomorrow's going to be the day. Between now and tomorrow is when we calculate what this month's payment's going to be. And I have people that work for me that also have to get a piece of that payment. So it's a difficult situation. And if we cannot increase the Patreon subscriptions to a reasonable level, that's it. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. As it is now, it's tough enough. We have a good show on there. Andrew Woomer from the Clean Air Council. That's going to be coming up shortly on the stations and on the podcast. It's a very, very important show because it's about the East Palestine train derailment and the toxic chemicals that spilled over there, killing the wildlife and harming the people. And this group, this Clean Air Council that we're trying to support, is raising money to purchase air purification systems to put in people's homes. And this is to put in people's homes that have small children, babies, pregnant women, in order to save their lives. So it's kind of an important situation there. It's in Patreon now, and it will be, we'll probably be playing it next week. So that's a very important show that we need to support. I got some old repeats there. The Gilligan Manifesto with Kevin Solling. Very interesting, intelligent fellow. We have that survey I was telling you about, which is also going to be going up free shortly. Right now it's for the members of how do they want to proceed, what we can do to improve the show. But we're going to be making that available too to all the listeners that are online. Good old Turbo Paul, the art thief, turns into art recovery. We got a classic episode with him. Professor Mel Heyman, burying in the lead, the media and the JFK assassination. The Barzini meeting. Just think, man, for years and years and years, I've been warning you. And I was repeating myself so much that I played a clip from The Godfather where Don Corleone was repeating himself, warning his son, but whoever arranges this Barzini meeting, that's going to be the traitor. That's going to be the one that's going to betray you. And I was warning you about these Twitter characters and frauds and con artists that have bought a microphone and put a microphone in front of their face in the past couple of years, this growth. They're elevated artificially on Twitter and basically spewing a bunch of BS that they have no actual involvement. The only information they're sharing with you is stuff that they Google online, which is, of course, controlled by the very people who we're trying to be reporting against. And they're just repeating other people's reporting. And I've been warning about this, and then we just seen it happen to me. This big ambush that took place earlier in the past couple of months with a bunch of bots and weaponized mental illness, people with mental illness, dangerous people, armed, kidnappers, homeless armed kidnappers that have been weaponized against me, and stalkers and all kind of harassers. Barry Levine, all the president's women, Donald Trump in the making of a predator. That's an oldie, but a goodie too. And there's some good stuff in there about this guy named John Tino, who was this organized crime figure in New York who claimed that Donald Trump used to visit these porn shops and porn theaters for rendezvous with porn stars and prostitutes back in Times Square. They used to call him Mr. Real Estate. And Mr. Tino was a widely discussed person behind the scenes as a credible source, then suddenly disappeared. I wonder, we're talking this week about Stormy Daniels. But, oh, by the way, who predicted that back in 2015 that Mr. Trump was going to wind up under arrest one day? What other presidential candidate during a primary has ever anybody predicted sooner or later this guy's going to wind up under arrest? He can never survive the scrutiny he's going to be under with all his tactics. And, he will be under arrest. And what do we have now? We have an arrest coming this week. I hope you can't hear that freaking chime coming over there with these notifications and with these wackos on all these people on Instagram defending Andrew Tate. And love to try to debate me. Brace Belden, San Francisco dog mauling story. I always love that story. Lisa Peace, A Lie Too Big to Fail. A lot of great content up there on Patreon. Also, Scrappy PI and a repeat of the stuff about the fixers, the bottom feeders, crooked lawyers, gossip mongers, and porn stars who created the 45th president. That's the whole Stormy. That's the behind-the-scenes Stormy Daniels story. With all the folks that I know, Gina Rodriguez, the manager, Keith Davidson, her attorney, her original attorney, who was a legit attorney, Dylan Howard from AMI, the National Enquirer, all the folks that are in my circle. Okay, and I actually spoke to these guys before they published this book. I gave them some information that I had them on. They're coming back. One of them is coming back for sure. I'm taping with them next Wednesday. So here you got a guy who not only predicted the arrest of a presidential candidate during the primary in 2015, but actually happens to be involved and knows all the characters he's getting arrested for. I don't know. And you want to subscribe to somebody else's Patreon when you got this? Okay, go ahead. I'm done. How's that? Okay, well, if I'm not doing enough for you, man, that you can't increase your $3 subscription to a $5 subscription, then guess who's out of here? Ed Opperman, that's who. Okay. Filmed a lot of great content taped a lot of great content recently. Andrew Worm I told you about. Clean up the 14th, judicial reform. This is about the Alec Murdaugh district and the court system down there where he lived in what do they call that? The Low Valley or something in South Carolina. And we have a woman who's done a lot of investigation into the old thing we've been talking about, how these judges and these attorneys and politicians, or someone like in the Stormy Daniels case, where they take out second mortgages, and magically these mortgages are repaid. And it's a way of making bribes, paying bribes to judges and politicians and prosecutors with no paper trail. You can't bring them a bag of cash. You can't mail them a check. You can't do a wire transfer. All that's traceable. But if they take out a second mortgage or a mortgage on their paid-off home, and then suddenly someone else pays off that mortgage, there's very little ability to trace that transaction, okay? Especially if it's done with money orders and things like that. Was the CIA behind the Jonestown Massacre? Now, that's our friend from Covert Action Magazine, the Philip Agee legacy. All kinds of good stuff I've been taping this week. I'm taping tomorrow with John Potash about it's some kind of assassination of one of the civil rights leaders. I forget which one it was back in the CIA involvement in that. So a lot of good stuff, a lot of good content for you to look forward to later on tonight. In real time, I'll be playing Was the CIA Behind the Jonestown Massacre by Jeremy Kuzmarov, who was the fellow from Covert Action Magazine. And remember Richard Kerr, the young man who was, he's my age now, but when he was a young boy, he lived at the Kincura School for Boys in Ireland, and he was low county. I've been corrected by the general. What do you call it? Richard Kerr. I'm playing him tonight because there's new information about that. He's found a video of his abuser who was being interviewed on YouTube by these fellows who are probably the worst interviewers on the face of the earth. Just to ask a question, they took 20 minutes just to ask a question. I could barely sit through the thing, but for Richard Kerr, it was traumatizing because that's the guy who trafficked him to Roy Cohen, by the way, Mr. Roy, as he called him. So we have Richard Kerr coming back after this, and right after this was the CIA Behind the Jonestown Massacre by Jeremy Kuzmarov from Covert Action Magazine. So we have all that going on, which is a very good interview, and I got some other people from Covert Action Magazine I'm going to be putting on too. I apologize, I can't pay that much attention to the chat room tonight because I got a lot of notes here. A lot of notes. As you know, I missed last week because I injured my arm, my bicep that was already injured. And I was just so stressed out by the whole situation of trying to navigate the healthcare system, where actually we reached out to a healthcare navigator who never got back to us, and had to pay out of pocket for a lot of examinations and stuff. So it was very, very stressful. I was exhausted. My arm was hurting. But just so you understand how serious this was, I hardly ever miss a show, but I couldn't write. I couldn't hold a pen and write. Okay? That's how serious this situation was. So I had some friends come down and take me on a little camping trip with their Toyota 4Runner that had a mattress in the back, and they had one of those tents that goes on the roof. So we camped out for a few days, about 5 or 6 days, and my friend is also a psychologist or psychiatrist. She can prescribe drugs. And so it turned into also to like a 5-day therapy session for me, which I think I well needed. As a matter of fact, she came to me and said, "Hey, listen, Ed, we've been listening to you, and you're in bad shape. I want to come down and talk to you." I'm more friends with her husband, but she had the spare time to be able to come down and talk to me and spend some time with me. So not only did we get to spend a lot of time talking to each other, but at this campsite, there was like a communal bonfire every night where people sat around and talked and stuff. And fascinating to be exposed to people who have no clue who Stormy Daniels is, who have no clue about the Hunter Biden laptop, or if they do, they think that they have some kind of inside knowledge from what they see on TV, and just clueless about what the facts are, what's going on in the news, and things like that. Like I was all saying, "Hey, was Trump indicted yet? Anybody check the radio, the news?" And people, it's just fascinating for me to be in contact with people like that when normally every day I'm speaking to some kind of author or expert, or the people that work with me are all very much aware of these kind of things. And of course, my daughter Victoria is going on these job interviews. I wish I could tell you the stuff this kid is doing. She just got a new scholarship for a training course in her field of endeavor, and got a great letter of recommendation to a very, very high-ranking member of Congress right now for her communications position, like you wouldn't believe. But unfortunately, we can't talk about these things like we used to be able to because of the weaponized lunatics that are directed at me these days, sometimes up to 4 hours a day. Okay, just so you understand what's going on over here. I hope you don't hear that. Because these notifications, Instagram notifications. During my camping trip therapy session, okay, I discussed a lot of my frustrations with this work I'm doing, shoveling the sand back into the ocean here, thinking that I'm somehow benefiting the world by my work here, exposing things and interviewing people and giving people a platform to get elected or to raise funds for their different situations. It's funny because just when I got back, only been back a couple of days, and my whole body I got aches and pains all over. You wouldn't believe, okay? Because I'm not a kid anymore. I'll tell you that. But I had 2 dreams this week about being stranded. One was I was on a bicycle trip, and I went to visit an old friend who had like a thrift store, and my bike got stolen. I got stranded at this store, and I had to walk to try to find. I think it was in Key West, Florida, where the dream took place. And I had to locate a bicycle at Walmart. I hate shopping at Walmart, but I needed a bicycle. And another one was I was back at Staten Island at the Staten Island Mall, and it was pouring rain outside, and I lost my phone, or my phone was dead. I couldn't get an Uber, and I couldn't get a cab, and I was stranded at the mall. So I had these 2 stranded dreams, one right after another, very vivid dreams where I remembered them. So I looked up what the dream interpretation was, and that's a person who's stuck in life and feels that they're stuck in life. Okay, and that's how I'm starting to feel by doing this radio reporting and this kind of PI work I do that so often is not financially rewarding, but how I kind of feel necessary to help the people who need help. So I'm at a crossroads in my life, and I'm telling you right now, if we don't see some dramatic increase in the Patreon, that I'm moving on in life, and I'll just put this place. I can put a tenant in where I'm living here and get a little travel trailer and just drive around and drive up down Pacific Coast Highway, go on hikes. I got enough money coming in. I don't need to do this. I enjoy talking to people. The guest I talked to today, what's his name? Jeremy Jefferson Morley, who wrote, you could find him at jfkfacts.substack.com. Wrote a bunch of books about the CIA. Great to have this guy on and share his information, but is it worth me, living in constant frustration and exposing myself to all the kind of stuff I'm exposing myself to? Half the stuff I know, I don't tell you what goes on. Okay, guest signed up to. Oh yeah, another thing too. So often I'm trying to book a guest, and who's aware of a certain situation. Like right now, people around the Stormy Daniels situation with this arrest, with the indictment and arrest of President Mr. Trump. And I reach out to them, and they can't come on the show because they've been hooked up and signed up exclusively by the networks. And they can't do outside interviews. And it's my opinion, it's been my experience that this is by design, because when they're on MSNBC or they're on CNN, they're not going to be asked the questions that I'm going to ask them. Okay, that's just never going to happen, and things that I know are not going to get out. So that's a situation I just wanted to point out to you. Now, with the Stormy Daniels indictment this week, there's 34 counts against President Mr. Trump. Now, in my opinion, that can't all be related to Stormy Daniels, to the Stormy Daniels hush money case the porn star who slept voluntarily with before he was president. It was 10 years before he was president when this one took place. And as you know, I know just about everybody involved in that deal, and we've talked about that to death. In my estimation, and I'm not getting this from anybody involved directly, but I do not think that all those 34 counts are related to the Stormy Daniels payoffs. I think there's other financial transactions that will be included in this, and I think they involve Alan Weisselberg, who was Trump's chief financial officer, who is in prison right now at 75 years old. So there's that. Now, one thing people don't realize that maybe even I haven't shared with you is that the folks that are behind this Stormy Daniels deal, people like Gina Rodriguez, who was my client, she was my agent, she was Stormy Daniels' agent, have also been involved in many of the other high-profile cases that I've described to you in the past. The Sarah Palin case came to me from Gina Rodriguez. Now, she shortly dropped out of that because I guess it wasn't profitable enough for her. And I continued on with the client Shelley Tripp on my own for no compensation. And that case wound up in Sarah Palin dropping out and declaring that she wasn't going to run for president after all of the evidence in the storage locker in the Alaska Sheriff's Department storage locker came to my office in Nevada. The same day I received it was the same day she made the announcement saying that people are making these allegations that my husband's having an affair, and that's why I'm not going to run for president. So it's the same people around that case, too. Now, so people who are trying to tell me around this campfire, well, all this Stormy Daniels, if this was true, it would be all over the news, and it's all politically motivated, and they're all paid off. Well, that's not the case, man, because I know these people, and they're not politically motivated. In fact, some of them, I would love to bring them certain situations. Right now I'm working on one. But they're conservative Republicans. They don't want to take those cases. Gina Rodriguez, who was behind the Stormy Daniels deal, and who also made the decision to bring in Michael Avenatti, okay? Now, I got no problem with Gina Rodriguez, by the way. I have no gripe with her. We're no longer... we're not on bad terms. We're definitely not working together any longer. I had my whole church praying for her when she had some kind of medical issues. But, a hustler. She's also the manager for Mama June, who is the mother of Here Comes Honey Boo Boo. And if you watch that series, Mama June from Not to Hot, she's actually on there. That she produces that or whatever. She's runs that thing. She was Octomom's agent. She was the agent for all of Dr. Drew Life Changers guests. I was on there. She was also used to supply the Dr. Drew drug rehab people there. I met her through the Tiger Woods case. So a little background on the folks who are behind this Stormy Daniels deal. It's not a politically... By the way, Gina Rodriguez, too, she was a Heather Leather... The one, the last Wienergate woman, Sydney Leathers. Sydney Leathers. She was the agent for her, too, as well. And also, too, facilitated the first images that went forward that I actually recovered from the phone. The woman Maria, who was the poker dealer in Las Vegas, the first Wienergate case, how that wound up with over there with Bannon, I don't know. I have nothing to do with that part of stuff. I can only tell you what I know. So, what do you call? Who was that guy? Ashton Kutcher. That case too. She got me that case too. So, at one point, half the stories you saw on TMZ each night were produced by Gina Rodriguez, who was behind the Stormy Daniels deal. Okay, and kind of screwed things up by bringing in this Avenatti character who thought he can get more money, and just wound up ripping off everybody in sight. Now, let's say we don't have time. I might need to take a mid-break Oh, we're doing good. We're mid right now. If I want to take a mid break, I can mid break right now. Well, there's a lot more coming, so don't go running away or going to sleep. Fascinating Michael Cohen Mea Culpa podcast and it's called Former Giuliani Henchman Lev Parnas Exposed the Trump Crime Syndicate. Now, I heard about this from a friend of mine on Twitter. He goes by the handle human with a question mark, and then it's at HACITERADASTRA. And I got to tell you, he's a DJ in New York, and I'm super impressed with this guy. He's really tuned into what's going on. He listens to this show. I hope it's okay. I asked for his permission to say his name. I can bleep it out if I have a problem. If you have any problem, I'll bleep it out for him in the repeats. Now, the thing is, this guy's super tuned in to what's going on in New York. A very savvy guy. I've invited him on the show as a gift. He says, "Nah, I'm just a DJ. I'm a DJ in New York." You know, he's just into this kind of stuff. So he tips me off to this podcast with Michael Cohen and Lev Parnas. Now, Lev Parnas, what was it, like on 3 years on house arrest, and then got like 4 months in the Otisville, I think it is, you know, and now he's back home on house arrest under this COVID consideration that they give you. But this guy's spilling his guts. Now, I've tried to book Lev Parnas before, and I'm going to reach out to him again because he's got some interesting information about the Hunter Biden laptop. Now, believe it or not, there's a connection between Stormy Daniels and the Hunter Biden laptop. Last week, I think I talked about it last week when I pre-recorded before my trip. Rich Costello, who is Rudy Giuliani's attorney, best friend, drinking buddy, butt buddy, whatever they do together, and they're very loyal to each other. And when he was called in to testify to give information negative about Michael Cohen, and he holds up the book, The Fixers of the Gossip Mongers and all that. He's holding up that book. I have that. While I was playing the repeat, he's holding up by coincidence. And I have one of the authors of that book, at least, coming back on next. We're going to tape Wednesday about what's been going on since with all this. So there's that nexus between Stormy Daniels and the Hunter Biden laptop there. Now, it seems that this Lev Parnas knows a great deal about the Hunter Biden laptop, too, as well. Both Michael Cohen and Lev Parnas talk about Rudy Giuliani just getting away with all these crimes. He can pretty much do whatever he wants. And they also talk about his relationship with certain organized crime figures in his own family. Now, from my personal experience, there was a certain organized crime family in New York City that I had to deal with when I had my nightclub. And when Rudy wanted to clean up New York and decided to close down strip clubs that were within 1,000 feet of a school or a church or a fire hydrant or whatever it was, okay, the funny thing is there's one certain family that wasn't touched. None of their clubs had a problem. They were allowed to operate. They could have a church on the first floor. You had to go through the church to get to the strip club, but they were still allowed to operate for some reason. And everybody noticed this. This wasn't something that was a mystery, and people talked about it. There's also, I've talked about this in the past, too, about Leroy Nicky Barnes, who was the heroin kingpin in the 70s. My former partner in New York City in the PI business was one of the cops who arrested Leroy Nicky Barnes, okay? And his son was the best man at my wedding. Now, there's an audio tape. You can find it on YouTube. It's in a couple of documentaries of Leroy Nicky Barnes on a recorded conversation from prison calling up SDNY, which is Rudy Giuliani's joint back in the time. He was in charge. And he's telling them, so listen, man, you know, I'm in here, and, you know, I got guys outside doing things for me, but when I tell them to do things for me, they're doing things against me. And what he was talking about was he had sent some hitmen over to this nightclub, this all-black nightclub in Harlem, to hit some guys who were dating his wife, okay? And instead of going in there and shooting up the guy who was Nicky Barnes' enemy, they went and sat down with them, and they drank and they ate and they partied with him. So this upset Nicky Barnes. So he says, well, my motivation is because I don't have anybody out there doing things for me. They're doing things against me. Shortly after that conversation, and I suppose other negotiations with SDNY, two white guys go into that same club and shoot Nicky Barnes' enemy. Okay, very interesting. And then there's a newscast of Giuliani standing out in front of the nightclub saying, we're going to solve this crime. We're going to look into this and we're going to investigate. So we're going to solve this crime. Okay. Now, so you got Michael Cohen. And by the way, I'm no fan of Michael Cohen. I've been told by reliable sources that Michael Cohen is still under the payroll of Jerry Falwell Jr., who's the whole situation with that pool boy, that good old Mark Ebner, who I think Mark Ebner's pissed off at me. He's not going to come back on the show. The pool boy with Jerry Falwell Jr., that Jerry Falwell, because Cohen stepped in when Falwell Jr. was being blackmailed. He stepped in and put a stop to it, and then Falwell gave the endorsement to Trump. Okay? And everybody knew about this a long time ago, before it hit all the papers and stuff like that, and before what's his name spoke, Mr. Ebner spoke, which is a great book. It's a great story. I'd love to get him back on the show. So Michael Cohen supposedly is still on the payroll of Jerry Falwell Jr., not to talk about Epstein and not to talk about Trump's abortions. Okay? That's what I've heard from the source who would know. Okay, if I said his name, you'd agree with it. He would know. Lev Parnas was his whole story. If you got to listen to this podcast, I recommend it. A couple of New Yorkers kind of cursing too much and putting too thick New York accents on, in my opinion, but Mr. Cohen is no broadcaster, that's for sure. But he knows a lot of stuff, and he knows a lot of people. They all know the same place. It's kind of made me feel jealous. Back in the old days when I was bopping around New York myself, almost tempted to go back and see who would kick my ass. I went back after all the talking I've done. Now, one of the biggest things, I think that should be the headline of this show, that because Cohen says, well, what were they talking about me when you were hanging out with Rudy and you were working for Trump and you were meeting with the Ivanka and Jared? And he goes, oh, well, when they saw the pictures of you talking to Reverend Al out in front of your apartment, they knew that you flipped for the FBI. They knew that you flipped. Now, why would that make them think he flipped? Because, as you know from listening to this show and my experiences with Reverend Al Sharpton, he was carrying a tape recorder in his briefcase for years when I knew him, and was working for the FBI as an active asset for the FBI, putting together cases and testifying cases. He was recording people, and he had a phone in his apartment that was a direct line. Everything he picked up, the FBI could listen to live. I believe he had a girlfriend who had an apartment in Trump Tower, too. So it doesn't seem that it's much of a secret that Reverend Al is still an FBI, and that Reverend Al brokered the deal between, what's his name, with Michael Cohen and FBI and the Department of Justice. That's what I took away from this. Mr. Lev Parnas said that Trump wanted to make Lev Parnas the head of the Cannabis Commission. Okay? He wanted to reward him with this huge cannabis deal. Oh, by the way, I got to back up a second, because it's Stormy Daniels. I mentioned how Stormy Daniels and Rich Costello came out with the book about the fixers at the Cohen, at the grand jury, right? the reason why that connects to the Hunter Biden laptop is because Rich Costello was there during all these negotiations over the Hunter Biden laptop that Dr. Keith Abloh was in possession of and wanted $2 to $3 million for. It was Rich Costello, according to ex-CIA agent whistleblower John Kirikawa, who wanted $2 million for a pardon. And $2 million is the same figure as the laptop. It was at the same meeting. It's my conjecture that they told Kirikawa, hey, you get us this laptop. You go in there, guns blazing, and get us this laptop. Or you tunnel in there or whatever, and you get us this laptop, and we're going to give you a pardon. But both of them talk about pardons for sale from $500,000 to as much as $3 million. That this was the going rate for the pardons that Mr. Jared Kushner put himself in charge of running all the pardons. They have a whole department at the White House for pardons, who gets pardons, they're vetting out people who get pardons, but this was just pardons for sale. Let's make a deal. Okay, we're doing good on time. Now get this. Lev Parnas, in this podcast, is talking about how, first of all, that it was Rudy Giuliani's agent in the Ukraine that got Hunter Biden the job at Burisma. Okay? Did you hear that? It was Rudy's guy that got Hunter Biden the job at that energy company that he's unqualified for, that he can't do, and all this stuff like that. And that everyone knew that he had this serious drug problem, and the Russian FSB, which is the old KGB, would take him to Kazakhstan, load him up with drugs and hookers, and film it. And that Rudy knew all about this and knew all about this stuff and this laptop back in 2019. And everyone says, how the hell did this guy in Delaware get a hold of this computer with all this stuff? I have by the way, there's a guy out there that's been helping me out with the Hunter Biden audio. Okay, I got more audio for you, man. I can't find your information. I can't find you. We've been communicating, I suppose, mostly through Instagram, and I can't find you anymore, man. I need you to get a hold of me right away, because we got a lot more information on this, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. So please get a hold of me if you've been listening this long. I should have said this at the beginning of the show. Parnas says that Rudy knew about the computer way before it got to the Delaware computer repair shop. And by the way, where did it go from the Delaware computer repair shop? It went to Rich Costello. Again. Okay? All over that laptop, man. Okay? But that the material we see of this drugged out Hunter Biden was all set up by the FSB, the KGB, where they would lure him, supply him with hookers, film it, supply him with drugs, and then load her up onto the laptop. Let's see what else here. The same agent. Lev Parnas also said that he's the one that arranged that perfect phone call where Trump is extorting Zelensky. And they were just like sitting around a table. And like off the top, Trump says, hey, can you get me Zelensky on the phone? He goes, oh, yeah, I'll get Zelensky right now. And Trump just off the cuff starts extorting this guy for hey, we're going to hold up your aid unless you investigate the Bidens. All this stuff has been going on about this, setting up this stupid Hunter Biden laptop stuff. When Lev Parnas was arrested, he was getting on a plane to Vienna to visit Burisma, but at the and you know who he was going with? He was going to go there with Rudy Giuliani and Sean Hannity, because Sean Hannity was going to get an interview over there. Okay? And at the very last minute, like within an hour, Rudy drops out. And the whole thing was Rudy was going to go there and handle the package, which was the laptop. Okay? Now, what do you call it? Rudy drops out at the last second. See, he must have known the FBI was on their way into it because Lev Parnas was arrested boarding that plane. I suppose Hannity was not. Okay. So that's a lot of information. Okay? A lot of information from somebody who knows what they're talking about, who knows the characters involved. I have a whole audio clip of all the interviews I've done that for the first time they've been put in all in one place, but now we have some information we need to add to that, and I want to use this to get an interview with Lev Parnas, and I think I can get a lot more out of him than good old Michael Cohen did. Okay, a couple of quick things. We got some time. Let's see how much time we got left. There's good stuff coming up too. This isn't filler tonight. Okay. I have been telling you about how Netflix came to me and wanted to put me on their media list for their upcoming shows and documentaries and things like that. And I had dropped the ball. I didn't sign up for their pre-screener media or, access thing. It was just too complicated for me. I didn't feel like doing it. Because I'm not getting paid, right? It's $3 a month is too expensive to support the Patreon. So I guess it's not worth my time either, right? So anyway, Netflix contacted me again, and I will be getting an interview with that fellow with the Waco a documentary that came out right now with the director of the Waco documentary. I'm going to be taping with him on Wednesday. Okay. Another thing that happened completely out of the blue. Remember that show I did about Ed's experience with human trafficking? And I talked about Annika Mack, the young woman. She came to me. She applied for a job. And I looked up her resume and I Googled her name. I saw that she did motivational speaking and that she was sex trafficked in Las Vegas and actually kept in a garage where she developed gangrene in her toes and her legs, and she started smelling so bad and one pimp sold her to another pimp, and they actually dumped her off at the ER. And her first contact with the police, they were going to arrest her. She had to have a finger and a toe amputated, all kind of stuff like that. And then another friend of mine who will remain nameless, who was held captive up by Lake Mead with this meth lab guy. And finally, when the police came and arrested him for the meth lab, they wouldn't arrest him for having her abducted all that time. They said there was no proof, so he got away with kidnapping for 2 years. Okay? Another woman who I had met, who was actually tied to a chair by her abductor. Again, no charges with the police. But another one I told you about with this lovely young woman who was held prisoner in a compound in Texas by a fellow that started out as her boyfriend, but she was locked into the home, and even outside of the home there was a big fence and a gate that was unable to scale, and she was able to escape one day. Okay, and that's what I thought. I'm back in touch with this woman. Okay, she's got a 9-year-old son now. She's a widow and had a great marriage with a wonderful fellow, but unfortunately he had a medical issue and he passed away. And we've been talking, and I found out, I never realized this originally, but her abduction case was 4 years. She was held in this house, this locked house, windows nailed shut, padlocks on the doors and windows, and then a big gate with chains on it around the whole place. And she escaped by a miracle. Otherwise, she'd still be there right now. So she got out of there after 4 years. So I just wanted to add that little tidbit to that story. If you've ever gone back and looked at the episode, Ed's experience with human trafficking. Oh boy. Okay. Now, what's this? Covenant School. There was a shooting in Tennessee, right? Let me see if I can find that thread. Oh, God, here it is. Covenant Presbyterian School in Tennessee. And there was this horrible school shooting this week, and the shooter was trans. And now you got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene trying to make a whole deal about how this shooter, this school shooter, which is very rare to have a female school shooter, shoot up a school. Okay, it's like 2%. I think there's only been like 4. So very, very rare. So I was contacted by somebody I trust, and they forwarded me a thread. I'm trying to interview the person who put together all this information so we can do a real thorough analysis of what's going on here. But it turns out that the Covenant Presbyterian Church and its church-run school that was targeted in the tragic shooting was the center of a complex child sexual abuse scandal from 2002 to 2012, which fits within the dates that the shooter attended that school. Okay? Now, there were several lawsuits. This was a huge scandal. There was a lawsuit in 2012 alleges that the defendants associated with Covenant, including Bachman, Aids, Avery, and Revenson, were involved in concealing unlawful child sexual abuse by John Perry. The plaintiffs were unaware of the abuse until 2012. By 2015, 2 lawsuits alleged child sexual misconduct by Perry during divorce proceedings. Perry's ex-wife claimed his inappropriate marital conduct led to their separation. Also, as reported by the Arkansas Times, I'm reading this from this fellow here on Twitter. John Perry was a prominent pastor who had co-authored several books with the then Arkansas governor, Mike Huckabee. The church allegedly used Perry's home as a safe house on the back of his good reputation for children they believed were mistreated by their parents. Which is something really outrageous, especially when you watch Dr. Phil. And people say that children are being abused. And sometimes they are, in tragic situations. Well, take them away from their parents. And people have this imaginary vision in their head. And those kids need to be taken away. And that somehow they're going to be taken away and put into a home of a white family who lives in the suburbs that are rich and go to Harvard. But no, when you take away these kids, they're either placed with family members that are the ones that screwed up the parents that can't raise the kids to begin with, grandparents and uncles and aunts, cousins that are just as screwed up as the people they're being taken away from. Or they're put into foster care for profit institutions, and the at risk goes through the roof that these poor children may be traumatized even further. I told you the story a couple of weeks back about how those kids that were rescued from the 13 kids that were all dressed alike when they went to Disneyland, were rescued from one abusive situation and put them back into several other abusive situations. Another house of horrors, from one house of horrors to another house of horrors. How many house of horrors are there out there? Now, so Mr. Perry's house, his home was used as a safe house. This arrangement allowed the church to remove children from their homes and place them under Perry's care, raising serious concerns about the safety and protection of these vulnerable children in the hands of a confessed child molester. In 2009, a family sought help from the attorney, Larry Crane, after being silenced for raising concerns about the children's safety in Perry's safe house. Crane, the attorney, later filed a $3 million lawsuit against the person who reported the abuse while representing Perry. You understand? Parents went to an attorney and said, hey, this guy Perry's abusing my kids. And later on, that same attorney represents Perry and sues reporters, families who reported abuse against Perry for $3 million. You follow? Okay. Now, this is from newspaper articles and stuff, So we got to get this guy on the show to get the whole thing. Additionally, the Davies sued Covenant Presbyterian Church and parishioner Dale Llewellyn, accusing the church of covering up for confessed child molester John Perry and putting children in Perry's so-called safe house. The family claims they were harassed, assaulted, threatened for raising concerns about the church's concealment of child sexual abuse. Despite the scandal, local media in Nashville has not covered the stories involving John Perry, who admitted to sexually molesting his daughter in court. The Presbyterian Church Association was reportedly going to bring charges against Pastor Jim Bachman of Covenant, another church member who was implicated in enabling the abuse, yet no one has been charged in connection with the child sexual abuse. If you just tuned in, we're talking about the school in Tennessee that was just shot up by this school shooter, okay, who was a student at that school during this period of time when all this abuse was going on. Why isn't this being reported in the mainstream press? There's plenty of links here, okay? Got to get this guy on the show, man, to really flesh this out. Now, this leads to the question, when females only commit 2% of all mass shootings and have only committed 4 of the 140 school shootings before this event, could this have been a carefully plotted vengeance mission? You notice at the beginning of the reporting, they kept saying, oh, no, she wasn't targeting anybody in particular. No one, police don't think anyone was being targeted. This was random. Nobody was being targeted. Why did they keep bringing that up? Yeah, they never bring that up in any of the other shootings, that there were targeted people, you know. Did Audrey Hale decide to partake in a tragic act of vigilante justice to try and bring attention to sexual crimes for which no one had ever been forced to pay? The ages match up. Audrey, born around 1994, would have been an elementary middle schooler sometime between 2002 and 2012 when the alleged abuse happened. Covenant Presbyterian taught kids from K-6 grade. Could Audrey have been a victim too? I see a picture of this poor kid, Audrey, when she was younger. Below is a link to a document to a database outlining the sequence of events of Covenant sex crimes and cover-ups. By the way, I should credit the author of all this. His name is Right Side of History, TM, at XXCLUSIONARY. What the hell are they trying to hide, he says. As a disclaimer, he's saying there's no way he excusing the actions of Hale. You know, sure, school shootings are bad. We can all agree with that, even if there are a bunch of child molesters being shot up. And he did shoot up kids, you know, or she, this trans individual. I'm not sure which way they trans. But you know, shooting up kids is wrong no matter what. You know, even if you're shooting up a kid if someone abused you. You know, there's some type of revenge. And even that's wrong, you know. Some people would say an eye for an eye, but I don't believe that. Hey, now, another potential piece of the puzzle, Hale messaged her middle school basketball teammate on social media, informing her she was going to die by suicide. And one day this will make more sense, Hale wrote. I've left behind more. And then they have a screenshot of her saying how... And by the way, the person she sent this to was given the runaround. She's called up suicide hotline. She's called up the sheriff, called up everybody in town. No one did a damn thing. Now, also, too, all this could be resolved if the Tennessee cops down there would release the manifesto written by the shooter. It was posted online. There's no reason why we shouldn't be allowed to see this. But we're not. And, you know, in the old days, like when I was first doing my email investigations and my online investigations, way back in the 90s, and, you know, before anybody was doing this kind of thing, if there was a major incident like that, this stuff was left up online long enough for you to find it, you know. Now it's taken down in seconds, in minutes. There's some kind of a mechanism in place. They don't want you knowing what's behind these crises and tragedies and all kinds of stuff, and they don't want you knowing anymore. I found all that stuff on John Mark Carr. It took me a couple of days later I was finding it, you know, and then I passed it on to CNN and Court TV and stuff, and some sources I had around those areas to publicize it. Okay, we're out of time. I'm exhausted. My back is killing me. Coming up next is was the CIA behind the Jonestown Massacre by Jeremy Kazmarov from covertactionmagazine.com. Now, I got to tell you something. There's a lot of stuff in this that I'm reporting that I had never heard before. And you know me, man. I've interviewed a lot of people that were at Jonestown, that studied Jonestown. A lot of people. So there's a lot of new stuff in this. So I encourage you. This is not a repeat. This was the CIA behind the Jonestown Massacre by Jeremy Kazmarov. That is not a repeat. It's a brand new content. Keep your eye out for it. There's brand new information in there that I know you have not heard before, because there's stuff in there that I have not heard before. Guys, thank you so much. Now, like I said, today's the 31st. Tomorrow's going to be April 1st. I'm serious about this, guys. I've been doing a show for 10 years. This has been thankless work. I've taken on a lot of abuse, a lot of threats, a lot of serious harassment. There was an incident one time that went back when I was investigating a certain thing. I've never talked about it, but physical altercations. Now, if we don't get some support on Patreon, or if you want to make a donation, go to OppermanReport.com and make a donation. Okay? If I can't get some financial support from the listeners to show me that you want me to keep doing this, I'm not going to keep doing this. And that's just that. No hard feelings. Okay? No hard feelings. Trust me. Okay? If you can't afford it, I can't afford it either. How's that? All right, so you can go to Patreon, and you can become a member for as little as $3 a month. Or if you're already a member, you can increase your membership by a couple of bucks a month. Just go from 3 to 5 and go from 5 to 10. It's not a lot of money, guys, okay? But if we had 1,000 people do that, just imagine the kind of work I could be doing for you, all right? Just imagine the kind of work that someone who knows the people involved could be doing for you. Not a guy that's Googling. Some of these guys are great Googlers. But let me tell you something. There's a lot of stuff that I've seen on Google a couple of years ago that's no longer on Google. Even myself, get this. It used to be when you Googled Ed Opperman and you went to images, you saw 20 pictures of Jeffrey Epstein. No, you don't. Okay? Because it's all controlled. It's all rigged. Okay? It's all rigged, guys. All that information you think you're so smart that you're getting what they want you to have. I'm giving you what I know from the people involved. Give me a break here. Patreon, Opperman Report Patreon. You go to OppermanReport.com. You hit the donate button. You can go straight to PayPal. Opperman Report at PayPal. Make a recurring donation of $2 a month, and I'd be happy. Okay? And great show. Don't quit, Ed. We love you. You're the best. Yoo-hoo, the best. You're the best at getting beat around. Okay? All right? The best at being targeted by weaponized lunatics. All right? All right, guys. Good night. Thank you so much. Chat room, I'm not mad at you. I love you. And I do love the listeners, too. And everyone does support the show. I do love you for that, too. Don't send me an email saying, hey, Ed, I can't afford it. I understand if you can't afford it. But there's plenty of people that can't afford it, okay? There's plenty of people out there that can't afford it. All right? So that's all I'm saying. Give you a lot of information tonight. All right, guys. Good night.